What's up everybody, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be continuing to work on our bathroom project, trying to wrap that up with the trim, final touches of paint, etc. But if you didn't see it, go ahead and go check that out down below. Luna, get out of my shot. What are you doing? We are starting this video a little bit differently today. We're going to be working on a small side project that we're going to probably span out between 2 or 3 videos just to show you guys how we're doing it. It's a DIY project, so I think it's pretty relevant to the channel. So I'm going to take you guys along and show you exactly how I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to start with today is I have some leftover butcher block from when we did our kitchen countertops. And so thinking of different things to do with it, my wife had a great idea of making some serving trays. I'm gonna start out by cleaning up all the edges. As you can see, it's pretty jagged. I did route this out. May have not been the quickest way, but it was a very precise way to get our sink cut out, since we did go with an undermounted sink. So the current dimension on this block right here is 29 by 16. We want to take it down to about 24 by 14. So I'm going to take it to the back table saw and we're going to cut all 4 sides. It's just going to be a lot quicker. And that's how we're going to achieve our size there. Also, a few tools that you're gonna some simple tools I'd recommend for this job is a tape measure. Never can go wrong with having a tape measure on you for any job. And also a speed square. Speed square will make things go much faster, clean lines. It's going to be way easier and more simple for you to get the job done. I had to rig up the table saw here, even though it says 24 inches. I guess with the stop on there, it was actually only like 21.5 inches. So I kind of had to do some out of the box thinking and figure something out. So I found a thin piece of wood and I just clamped it, and I had to adjust it a few times, but it did end up letting me get a little bit longer piece than what the table saw would actually let me. All right, so we finished cutting. All right, so we finished cutting our butcher block, and since I did have to rig up the table saw, it did come out slightly shorter than I really wanted it to. Instead of 24 by 14, it's 23.5 by 14. That's not a big deal. It's not gonna affect anything with the actual board itself. All right, so that's all we're gonna do with this today. We're gonna finish this up later on, and for the rest of the video, we're gonna continue in the bathroom. So one thing we need to figure out real quick is how much width we have here, because I still need to stick a board here, and I would like to go with the 1/8 inch piece that I already have, but I cut them all at 6 inches. So this is a bit wider. This is about 7 1/8. We just need to make sure that our cornering is gonna cover enough to where when we put a 6 inch board up here, it's gonna be completely trimmed out. It's not gonna be too short. So let's go figure out how much coverage we got with our cornering, and then we'll come back and see if it's gonna work. All right, so it looks like our cornering is gonna have about maybe 13/16, pretty close. So 13/16 per side. All right, I got our measurement. So we should have about 13/16 overhang for our cornering. And I marked it up here. That should be where our trim ends. So we can kind of put our scrap board up here, and that's gonna be our clearance. So we will be able to use a 6 inch piece. I'll just have to cut it to the right length, and then our trim should cover everything. So we're gonna cut a 45° in our trim. Nothing special, we're just gonna cut it that way, make it nice and fluid, seamless. Remember, we're pre-cutting all these trim pieces, so nothing's getting nailed up just yet. We'll be putting the baseboard down and then putting everything else up, but we're just starting with this to cut it because it's easier and it should go a little quicker. All right, so I basically have it just mocked up here. No nails or anything in it yet. But just to check the cuts, make sure everything is fitting properly. I still gotta cut this side, but this left side, you can tell it looks almost perfect. We got a good fitment there. We got a pretty good fitment there. You can tell how it's gonna turn out. It's gonna end up looking very nice. Yes, can I get a number 2 with cheese? So I ran into a little issue with my miter saw that I was using, since the baseboard I have is pretty wide. It's about 5 3/4, pretty close to that. Before my saw blade would actually complete the cut, it was having clearance issues with the motor on the side of the saw hitting the top of the trim. So I don't know if that's normal, if there's a way around that. Some of the pros out there can probably comment below. I did figure out a couple ways to make it happen, but to me it was a little dangerous, because to get the guard to also clear, because the top of the guard was also hitting, I had to take the top of the guard off the blade, so it was just an open blade. So it's pretty sketchy. So I just kind of got tired of fooling with it and getting frustrated. So I called up my dad and I asked if I could borrow his multi-adjustable miter saw. It actually rotates just 45 degrees on the tilt as well as the angle. So I was able to get that one. That's what you just saw there. That's my parents' house. But I was able to get that one, and that made the job go much quicker, and I didn't have to worry about being so frustrated with it, and I could knock it out. So that fixed a lot, and I'm really glad that my pops let me do that. So appreciate it, pops. All right, guys, so our baseboard is now cut for our sink area. I put everything in place just to make sure all the cuts were good. And I would like to tell you everything went 100% perfect. However, even though I tried to plan the best I could by writing all my measurements down, my dyslexia got the best of me. And instead of cutting 43 3/8, I wrote down on my little scrap piece here, 34 3/8. So obviously it was way too short for what I needed. But the good thing about baseboard and having to do so much up here still, and we're using the same baseboard all around, is that I can always use it for another area. Anyway, always double and triple check your measurements. That way you don't have to go back and cut anything. One last thing before we get to painting, guys. I wanted to go over the painter I'm gonna be using, and then also the type of paint we're gonna use for our trim. So the painter we have here is a Paint Zoom. I think there's a few different models. So this one was about $100. So cheapest one I saw was like 47. One thing I do know is that my parents actually have a Zoom painter they bought 3 or 4 years ago to try it out. They have a pretty large living room, and they painted the entire room with this thing, and it turned out looking really great. I actually found this left by the previous owners in our metal building in the backyard. This was in one of the boxes, brand new, not opened or anything. Still was in the plastic, the gun was still wrapped up. So we're gonna be trying it for the first time and seeing exactly how it does on the job. And if it goes well, I will probably be using it a lot more in the future, I'm sure. We also have our Behr paint. It's a Behr Premium Semi-Gloss, and it's an enamel paint. But it is not water-based or oil-based. It's actually an acrylic base. So you can mix it with water. I think you add 20 and then you kind of work your way up to see exactly where you need it. I never used it in a spray gun, so that's a little new to me. But I just wanted to share with you guys exactly what I was using for it, so you guys can be educated and look into maybe some of this stuff if it all works out. All right, guys, if you do choose to go this route and pre-paint your trim, this doesn't mean you're not gonna have to paint once it's up on the wall. You're gonna have nail holes you're gonna fill, you're gonna caulk around the edges, all that you wanna paint over to make it look as seamless as possible. This is just something extra that I'm choosing to do while I have the opportunity and it's off the wall. And that's because it's in a wet area, so if any moisture gets underneath the trim or behind the trim, I have an extra layer of paint just in case, so nothing gets warped or has to be replaced down the road. So just keep that in mind. That's why I'm doing it. So it's not required. It's up to you. All right, guys, so it is the next day and everything has been cured overnight. It's been sitting. It doesn't need to dry overnight. This is actually a pretty fast drying paint, but I had some other things come up and it was getting pretty late, so I went ahead and just left it where it was. The finish looks pretty good. The camera probably doesn't do it justice, but it does look pretty fantastic. It's smooth. My thoughts on the Paint Zoom, it did pretty well. I tried like a 20-80 mixture at first, 20% water, 80% paint. And I did actually the first coat on it, and it left a lot of like basically orange peel. So I went over and kind of skimmed over with sandpaper, everything. So it was a bit frustrating. So I watered it down to probably about 35%, to be honest. The second time it's gonna be very watery, but the finish came out much better. So it's smooth, and I laid it on pretty thick. If you guys get one, make sure you get your mixture right. And I think that's pretty much gonna take care of any problem you might have. I would probably recommend getting a Zoom if you're looking for an electric paint gun. I was pretty happy with the result. So at this point, there's really nothing left to do but to take this trim and the crown molding straight to the bathroom, throw it up, and then we'll start wrapping this project up.
guys, so that's pretty much going to be a wrap for today's video. We've definitely got a lot of stuff accomplished in our bathroom, especially coming from the very beginning when it was just an empty closet. It's kind of hard to believe at this point, but we just have a few minor things to touch up here and there. But I think our next video, we're going to focus on a different part of the house, just to make sure we're moving along, getting some other things knocked out, and making it interesting for you guys. So if you'd like to see what our next project is, please be sure to subscribe down below. Also, leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. And also, if you would like to comment, leave a comment down below. Let's get that conversation going so we can all benefit and learn together. and I'll see you guys next time.